So when we think of higher order thinking, typically teachers are given Bloom's taxonomy or they're given Webb's depth of thinking for higher order thinking. That is normally what we think of when we think of higher order thinking. And I'm not going to go over them because I feel like at this point, especially with the people in the room, I don't need to. Like, we've been in teaching, we get it. However, I am going to kind of challenge some of the verbs and stuff in these two ideas or two theories. So the first thing that I need you to do is, I kind of have a quiz. So scan this QR code and let's see how many we get correct. How many DOK levels can you get correct? I put 6 questions. I was trying to be inclusive of connections teachers. So I tried to get some different levels. And I made it where it doesn't collect emails as well. Some people are weird about that.
Not collecting emails?
It's not collecting emails.
I will confirm, just confirming.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to come back to this though. So we'll come back. Okay, so one of the things I want you to do, pull out my little notes because I'm nervous. All right, so if I said analyze this painting, I'm going to turn on Canva Live. Okay, so you're going to go to canva.live. You can go on your Chromebooks or on your phone. I want you to analyze this painting. Okay? So I want you to just type in analyze this painting. When I say analyze this painting, what do you analyze? What do you get from that? The code is 423364. You can just type in your response. If you need to get closer, you can.
We're supposed to analyze the painting.
Analyze the painting. It's really all of that direction I'm going to give. Normally I want to like follow up with several other questions, but just for this purpose, it'll just be analyze this painting. Okay, so you can't really see the responses, but I'm gonna go through and kind of talk about it. But when I say analyze this painting, it's really similar to when we tell students, analyze this text. And we don't really kind of give them the correct verbs, I guess, to get the point across. So we will say analyze and we assume it's on a DOK4, but just because we say analyze does not make it DOK4. So just by looking at these responses, some of them are actually analysis, and some of them are just telling me, making a connection to something. They're not actually truly analyzing the painting and how all of the pieces build to the product as a whole. So like for instance, this one says, the painting appears to be a scene from Greek mythology. While this is a great observation, it's not true analysis because it's not breaking the painting apart and figuring out how maybe the colors contribute to the overall effect. Let's see. So the questions I kind of have as analysis would be, how many discuss the use of colors, materials, or artistic techniques. How do they all contribute to the whole of the painting? But when you look at some of the responses, some of them are just talking about what does this look like. So it's not true analysis. And I think that we often as teachers, we do this a lot where we use the verb so we think we're covered in the sense of DOK4, but in reality, it's just remembering, recalling, or understanding. It's very basic as far as depth of knowledge goes. So today, I guess I'm kind of going to go over some common mistakes that we make when we look at Bloom's taxonomy, and then we'll just go and apply it to our tests in our classrooms. So the first mistake that we usually run into is we think that a task is at the analysis level, but it's actually at the understand level. So kind of like I was trying to say earlier, but I didn't have the words on my note sheet. Analysis is when you break a whole into parts, and then you're looking at how each part contributes or impacts the whole. So in the example of the painting, like I said, you would take this painting apart, you would think, okay, colors, let's look at the colors. Now, how do the colors impact the whole painting? So that is what true analysis is. And then one of the things that we struggle, or I struggle with, not even me, or not everybody, but I personally used to struggle with the fact that I would go over something, I would analyze something in class. I would have notes on the board. We would have the passage and the Elmo, and I'd be writing out analysis. Then on their test, I would say, okay, what is this? And it's basically the same concept I had taught, but I'm not actually requiring them to analyze. At that point, it's remembering, in my opinion. It's not true analysis at that point. It's them recalling what I had just presented to them as analysis. Another common mistake that I feel like I make, and I guess the more I'm around, the more I see, is that we think a task is creating, but it's actually just remembering or understanding, and we put it in a pretty package. So we use the word create because we see it on the DOK wheel, and we're like, ooh, this is good. I'm making them create a balloon ball, or I'm making them create something. But in reality, they're not actually hitting those higher depths of thinking. So like for instance, I put on the tables, there's like an example of what I'm kind of talking about. So like on this table, there's a balloon ball, and it looks so nice, and it looks pretty, and it looks like, man, they really are creative in this. However, when you actually break it apart, it's not hitting those higher level thinking skills that we need. It's actually just maybe recalling or understanding when you take apart all the pretty packaging. I also did it with this project that I had students do. Once again, it looks great. It looks like, wow, these kids truly understand this story. But if you take all the pretty packaging away from it, it's really them just maybe identifying, or it's them observing something about the book. It's not truly creating in the sense of what it was meant. So, what is creating, you might ask? Creating is going to require students to organize a pattern, a structure, or a product that is completely new and has not previously existed. So I like to think of a lot of project-based learning would be what they're kind of talking about when they say create. Okay. I really liked this quote. I saw it and I wanted to include it. Work at the creative level doesn't need glue, markers, scissors, or technology to necessarily qualify as a create task. If you remove all the creative trappings and just look at the mental work students are doing, it should involve creating something new with the content that they're learning. So if you are just saying, hey, create a poster, you're still not hitting DOK4. You're just restating information. Okay, and then to piggyback on that, another common mistake is we often think that the DOK4 is only written response task. This one's actually very controversial. There are people who would argue, and this is a hill they would die on, that writing is the only DOK4 task. However, for this sake, I'm going to argue against that. I think that, like I said, you can do project-based learning activities. You can give them a problem and require them to design and conduct experiments, analyze the data from the experiment, and report on the results and solutions from that data. You can have them apply a math model to eliminate a problem or situation. You can have them, there's so many other ways you can do DOK4, but I think the reason we're kind of in this trap of thinking DOK4 is only writing is because when you look at milestones, the only DOK4 that you see is in language arts, and it's always with the written responses, because that's the only way that they can really assess creativity in a time-sensitive way, in my opinion. But in reality, I do think that there's other ways to do DOK4 without the written response piece. So let's go to the quiz. So like I said, I promise I did not collect emails. So what we're going to do is, here are some of the results. So really, this is not going to be me telling you, this is why it's this. This is just honestly to open up discussion about why we put what we put.
I just did this.
And that's fine. But I think it's a really good way to open up discussion of why, I don't know that we always have the same understanding of depth of knowledge. So on number 1, it says create a timeline to illustrate sequence of major events. A lot of us put DOK1. I personally would have argued maybe a DOK2, but at least the DOK4, I think my husband did because I had him take this quiz yesterday as I was making my mock presentation. But at least I think we're understanding, the majority of us understand it's a lower level skill, even though it has create in the question. So this one was really tricky because there were two verbs here. Evaluate the effectiveness of different warm-up exercises and select the most suitable ones for a specific fitness goal. So I think it's interesting that a lot of us put DOK4. Does anyone want to share why, maybe? It's okay if you don't, I can just keep.
One, I feel like they had to analyze what the goals were, big picture, and had to backtrack and look at smaller things and analyze smaller things to get to the big picture fitness goal.
And compiling information across things and applying it somewhere else.
Yeah, so honestly for me, I could see this being DOK3 or DOK2. I honestly should have selected probably 2 answers. But I think the most, for me, when I'm thinking of this question, I think I see more of the selection process than the true evaluation process. But I can see how it could be DOK3 potentially, because you do have to analyze the effectiveness of it.
There's someone that I know that does a lot of training that would say that any multiple choice question is a DOK1 because you're identifying every time.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because as teachers, we hear of Bloom's taxonomy and we hear of Webb's depth of thinking, and these are constantly being thrown around, and they're almost educational buzzwords at this point, where we all say, oh, we need DOK4, but I don't think we always have the same understanding of what the different questions are. So I'm not going to go through all of them. However, I just wanted to really point out that the way that we see the questions, if you look at the answers, every single one had multiple answers for the same question. And it just kind of proves that we're all on different levels of thinking here. Like all of us think differently when we look at DOK 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so I'm going to share my presentation because I don't really know the better way to do this. So. Okay, I spelled her name right. Okay, anyways, I'm going to share it eventually. I'm just going to go ahead and go through it. So what I did was I took all of the milestones DOK percentages for each grade level and their milestones test. So I went to math and I got the new math standards. I went to ELA in each grade level because they're different. 6th grade, they're going to have different ELA or depth of knowledge percentages than 8th grade will. So when I share the presentation, there are the depth of knowledge for all of the state tests that our school gives. Some people, they don't have a state test in their grade, so I would just advise, I know that 8th grade has them in all 4 content areas, maybe looking at the 8th grade level since that's what you're going to be ultimately preparing them for. But one of the most helpful activities, and I just wanted to share this, is doing a test blueprint. I did this in my gifted endorsement, and it really opened my eyes to how I'm assigning assessments, and especially like multiple choice assessments that we see on milestones. It opened my eyes to the fact that I'm not really challenging my students the way that I thought I was, and this just helped me, I guess, when planning for this year. It helped me kind of see how I could improve my practice. So if you want, when I share this presentation, you can choose to click here, or you can scan the QR code and go mobily, but this is what it's going to take you to. And I just want to challenge you to maybe fill this out for just one of your assessments. If you will take one of your assessments and fill this out for it, I'm just curious, like, if you had the same type of reaction that I did. So the way it works is you'll just put your standard here if you want. Like some people, they have multiple standards on their test. For me personally, usually I'll have maybe 1 or 2. But what you do is you go through your test questions and you just would type the number in. So like if number 1 was a DOK 3, I'd put it here. If it was number 2 was DOK 2, I'd put it here. So you're just going to go through the test, and then say you had another standard that fell for number 4. So you're looking at your questions for your test, and you're putting them in the correct level. Then right here it tells you, like it wants you to add the total number. So like I would go 2 and 1. And then at the end, for me, this was just eye-opening to me because when I looked at mine, I can actually show you mine. It was actually I was embarrassed. A lot of it was DOK 1 or DOK 2. There was not a lot of depth there when I truly looked at it. And then, to take it even further, when I would go to the milestones page for 8th grade, and I look at this, and 25 to 35% of the questions are DOK 3.
And that's across the board for all grade levels, for all tests. The majority of questions fall in DOK 2 and 3, not DOK 1.
Exactly, and I just thought that was like, that just really opened my eyes to, am I really preparing them for their end goal at the end of the school year when my assessments are largely 1 and 2, but if I look here, like level 3 is up to 35% of their tests. So I guess I'm not saying to teach to the test, but I just wanted to share some realizations that I had when going through my gifted endorsement, and I just wanted to kind of share them and potentially help someone else see it way before their 6th, 5th year of teaching. But that is all. I just wanted to point that out. So I'm done now. But thank you guys for attending. I know that you had a busy planning